Greetings, citizens of YouTube. I am Zazubaar, and today I'm here to do a little bit of explaining for the video that you are about to watch and or listen to. So, I do a podcast every 2 weeks called the Sons of Sarazawa Podcast, in which myself, Zazubaar, aka Bill Worster, again, depending on your preference. My preference would be, I don't really give a fuck. In the podcast that I just mentioned, God, I'm going off on so many tangents. I apologize. This is like the 5th time I've tried to record this, and I don't know. It's been a rough day. YouTube changes its fucking comment layout. It's been a rough day. Anyway, so I'm gonna try and ignore that and just get on with the explaining, so you can enjoy hopefully quality entertainment as opposed to this rambling. So, in this podcast I just mentioned, the Sons of Sarazawa podcast, myself and these 4 friends discuss insane topics that range from plain jizz to giant bipedal moose, and we discuss pop culture, we discuss entertainment news, we discuss life, we tell stories, we do a bunch of crazy bullshit that no one cares about, but apparently some people do, because we get fairly good ratings, and it is a lot of fun, and I always enjoy doing it. However, it's a lot of people in one podcast. Most podcasts are usually 2 or 3 people in one podcast, with, guests coming in and out, which would increase the number, but it's usually 2 or 3 week to week. Some people even do it just by themselves, which is insane to me. I don't know how the fuck you do a podcast by yourself, but apparently some people do it, so God bless them. But 5 people in one podcast every 2 weeks is a lot, and while it's fun, it gets very, very crazy, and it is nearly impossible to stay on topic, even though there's never a topic, but to stay with one flow of conversation and have one coherent thought. So it's great for these insane ideas that we come up with on the show, and it's great for 5 friends just bullshitting about it and just making each other laugh, which is more or less the purpose of it, and hopefully having the listeners laugh as well. But I wanted another podcast offering for my subscribers, and do one that I would also really enjoy doing on a much smaller scale, because the Sons of Sarazawa podcast, again, it's really, really big, with 5 people going on for almost 3 hours every other weekend. It's a lot. And even with those 3 hours, again, you don't get the chance to say everything that you might want to say in a podcast, because we got 5 people throwing their ideas in and, having the craziness ensue. I mean, I've heard people describe the Sons of Sarazawa podcast as nothing else but insane, and I agree with them. But I think it's a good thing. Some people may not, but I do. But I did want another podcast that was perhaps equally insane, but a little bit more of a more personal podcast, because with 5 people, it's hard to call it personal. So I decided to create a spin-off series of the Sons of Sarazawa podcast that you're about to listen to, but let me explain it a little bit first. What happened was the Sons of Sarazawa podcast came out of the conversations that us at the Sons of Sarazawa, which is a Facebook page and a group of YouTube guys who which I'm a part of, that does the World War G series on Adam Noise's channel, does a bunch of Godzilla chats mainly, and kaiju related chats, and the podcast came from us having these insanely entertaining conversations after we stopped recording. And I thought that it was ridiculous that we weren't recording them and posting them as a podcast, because to my ears they sounded extremely entertaining, and I thought that at least some people out there would get an equal amount of enjoyment out of it as we were doing the conversation, and it turned out to be true. People enjoyed it, but specifically, the podcast directly came from a conversation that me and Dillion had, Dillion, of course, being Super DM64, about a week before we actually recorded the first episode of the Sons of Sarazawa podcast. We had this insane, roughly 2.5 hour conversation that went all over the place. We talked about sharks. We talked about Godzilla, of course. We talked about YouTube. But with all those things mixing together, we started talking about foreign interpretations of Godzilla films, meaning when Godzilla films were released out of Japan. And that led to us going back to an old but very good joke amongst hardcore Godzilla fans, making fun of the German version of Godzilla vs. Megalon, which is, of course, called King Kong, Watan des Fall something or other. It's a weird, wacky German name. But really the part that sticks out is King Kong, because if you've seen Godzilla vs. Megalon, there's no King Kong in it. So, we were trying to discover how the fuck could King Kong, how the fuck could they call that a King Kong movie? What did they do? And that led to us discovering that, in the German version of Godzilla vs. Megalon, they say that Jet Jaguar is King Kong in a robot suit. Their words, not mine. And this conversation went off on a long tirade of us making fun of that. And then we said to ourselves, if the first thing we notice is the fact that they think Jet Jaguar is Kong in a robot suit, what the fuck does the rest of the title mean? So we plugged it into Google Translator, which may not be the most accurate of translators, but even if it's not in this case, I don't give a fuck. This is officially the movie's title, in my opinion. And the full title comes out as King Kong and the Demons from Outer Space. King Kong and the Demons from Outer Space. Just let that simmer with you for a moment. It is like the most inaccurate, non-descriptive title for a movie I have ever seen. And it led to one of the greatest conversations I have ever had with a fellow human being about just how the fuck does that make sense? What does it mean? We started analyzing it, and it was a lot of fun. And that was where I thought the Sons of Sarazawa podcast should be. And it definitely is that way. But I thought to myself, if the Sons of Sarazawa is more or less a group of friends throwing all their different ideas into the ring to come up with one insane conversation, what if we took it back to the roots and did it with just the two guys who kind of began that trend for the SOS, who thought that was worth doing? Because Dillion was the first guy who I contacted about doing the podcast and asked if he thought it was a good idea. So I thought that it would only be fitting to do the first spin-off of the Sons of Sarazawa podcast with just Dillion. To do an entire series of an entire new podcast series that's just me and Dillion shooting the shit. Because, again, while we have those insane fun conversations in a group, Dillion and I also have insane conversations with just each other, which is just me and him bouncing shit off each other. So I thought that it would only be fitting to do that as a podcast, as the first spin-off of the Sons of Sarazawa podcast. And I only thought it would be even more fitting to call it The Demons from Outer Space, in honor of our first conversation, which led into the inception of the SOS, being about King Kong and the Demons from Outer Space. So, that long-ass story, that 10-minute story I just told you, that 10-minute tirade I just went on, is all to introduce the pilot episode of Super DM64 and I's brand new weekly podcast this time, The Demons from Outer Space. So, without any further rambling from myself, Zazubaar, except for one more thing. I'm sorry, I forgot one more major point, which is actually the fucking reason I did this intro. Alright, before I let you guys get into the podcast, we did this first episode last Thursday. We recorded it on Halloween, which I think I mentioned in the podcast, and I think we go off on a conversation about it. And what happened was, both Dylan and I, even though we live in different parts of the country, we were both having bad weather. And my internet connection seemed to be alright. My weather wasn't as bad, though, but Dylan was going through some rain, had some fucking rain. So, it kind of fucked with his internet connection. So, there were, I believe, 2 times in the conversation where we lost each other, where the conversation cut out completely, and the call automatically dropped. So, what happened was, there's a point in the middle, which I'll cut out so you probably won't notice it, where the conversation just stops and we pick up again in a kind of awkward transition. But then the more major point is at the end of the podcast when Dylan all of a sudden just cuts out and I'm by myself. So bear that in mind while listening. There's not really going to be an end to this first episode of the Demons from Outer Space. It's just going to kind of keep going until it just stops. So it's going to be really awkward. I just wanted to warn you guys. I'll put a little edit in at the end, which is just saying, from me, bye everyone, I'm Zazubaar, thanks for watching the first episode. But I just wanted to warn you guys in advance, because that's not how podcasts end. So, just figured I'd warn you guys. So please forgive that particular problem. There's a little bit of scratchy audio here and there on my end. I was a little bit too close to my mic during the recording. I fixed it as best as I could. So it's not hugely problematic. It's audible, so it's not really a huge problem, but it's definitely noticeable. But with those warnings in mind, without any further ado, without any further rambling from me, I'll let you guys dig into the first episode of The Demons from Outer Space. Okay, and we are recording in 1, 2, 3. Hello, everyone. I am Zazubaar.
And I'm SuperDam64.
And welcome to a brand new podcast here on Zazubaar Film Productions. And
because that's Zazubaar's new hobby, making podcasts.
That apparently is. How many do I have going now? I got Zcast, which isn't really going, but it's a thing. We got SOS, which is a bi-weekly show, which we have kept up on, shockingly.
Yes.
We're 7 episodes in. We just had our big Halloween special.
How many episodes did ZGC have? Because once we have more than that, I'll feel safe.
ZGC had 11 episodes? No. 9 episodes. 9 episodes.
9? Ooh, we're close, man. We're close.
I know, right? It's so sad that if a bi-weekly podcast as opposed to a monthly review show, like, that's our standard. Like, if we beat that, then we're good.
Oh, yeah.
So, 11 episodes in, it's like, yes, we've done it, guys. Now we can quit.
We beat our previous record for keeping a show going. You guys thought that 10th episode commentary was going to happen? No.
No, it would happen because it'd be 11th episode where we quit. So you have the 10th episode commentary.
Oh, yeah, right.
And then you have an 11th episode regular where we talk about how, sun bears have conquered the world.
And then at the end of the episode, you just say, hey, okay, everybody, we have an announcement. This was the last episode.
Right, exactly, and then we would end the show. Because we're cool like that, and, that's just the logical thing to do. Anyway,
but now we have revealed our secret plan to the masses.
Damn it, now we have to kill all of them. Anyone who's listened to this podcast will have to die. But those of you who are listening who haven't yet been killed by Dillon's attack dogs...
We'll have to encode, like, some sort of supernatural curse into this podcast, like what they have on the Ring, so that when people listen to it that aren't us, they die.
Unless they force someone else to listen to the podcast.
They get like a phone call. It's like, you're going to die in 7 days. Why 7? I don't know.
Because a week is a nice round number and amount of time.
Who
would we send after them to kill them? Because I can't do it. I don't have the body type to murder someone.
It's a really nice ghost. It gives you time to get your affairs in order.
You have time to write your will.
I'm sure if you asked your friend Milan, he would be more than willing to be our supernatural killer.
Milan would love to become the Ring. He'd love to put on that dress and that wig and go around and kill people at his own pace too. Because you got 7 days, so.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can really stretch it out. He could watch them as they sleep, get as creepy as he wants.
Right, he could jerk off a couple times over their bed.
Exactly,
The usual stuff. Anyway, so what the fuck is... As he does. What the fuck is the name of this podcast, Dylan?
This podcast is called The Demons from Outer Space.
Welcome, everyone, to the first pilot episode of The Demons from Outer Space.
And if you don't know why it's called The Demons from Outer Space, clearly you're not watching SOS.
From Outer Place.
Outer Place. If you don't know what The Demons from Outer Space is a reference to, clearly you have not been watching SOS, and we will be sending Milan to kill you.
Right, indeed. So that's the other thing. Not only if you listen to this podcast and know our plans for ending SOS, which, by the way, is the Sons of Sarazal podcast. I don't think we ever stated that. You will not only have the Ring go after you for listening to the podcast, you'll also have the Ring going after you for not listening to the podcast. So it's kind of contradictory.
Well, see, the thing is, if they've been a fan in the past, and their murder will be less severe.
So if you...
But if they
wait a minute.
But if they don't get our in-jokes, clearly they're not fans of ours, and therefore it will be extremely painful.
For you. So if they're SOS virgins, then Milan will also rape them. Or defile their corpse.
I think he would have done that anyway, but he'll do it while they're still alive.
Well, don't you think it's more disrespectful to do it when they're dead?
Well, I mean, yeah, but he's going to do that anyway, so if he does it while they're alive, then they know what's happening.
Fair enough, Dylan. Fair enough. I can see you put a lot of thought into that. Anyway, so
I have been planning this out.
All this time I was waiting for you to come on, Bill. I was planning out how Milan would defile someone as they're about to be murdered by him. This was a thought that I had.
Right.
Anyway, so yes.
That's the extra part. The murder is just the icing on the cake. If we wanted somebody to just go out and rape the people that are listening to this, we would just send Adam. But...
Oh, God. But what if they're women? We'd have to get 2.
You think we have women listeners, Bill?
I guess not, Dylan. I guess not. I guess the science is sound. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening. That was another episode of the Sons of Sarazal podcast. No. This is not the SOS podcast. This is the Demons from Outer Space podcast, and we will do our best to differentiate between them. That's actually something we debated about a little bit, was whether or not we were going to put the word podcast after it, because we do that with everything. Like, we have Zcast, and we have the SOS podcast, and now we have the Demons from Outer Space, but I think...
You just renamed Bondapalooza podcast.
The Godzilla Gang podcast, even though it's not actually a podcast.
Oh, it's a slideshow with a plot.
That's basically what it is anyway.
Yeah,
so.
we established that before. It's not actual stop motion. It is a slideshow with a plot.
That's exactly what it is.
And
that's the that's the tagline for season 3 is the Godzilla Gang, a slideshow with a plot.
And the goodness of said plot varies.
Varies drastically, depending greatly on the writer. Ooh, burn. Anyway, so we debated on that.
Was that a burn against me? I thought you were insulting yourself.
No, I was insulting myself.
Oh.
I would never insult you, Dylan. I love you too much.
Oh, okay, you were burning yourself. All right.
Yeah.
Massive.
No, Anyway, so I don't know why. The reasons for why we're doing this are kind of just because we have epic conversations.
Yeah.
I mean,
That
What was that?
That and we're bored.
That and we're bored. Yeah, it's not like we don't have enough on our plates already. We needed one more podcast in order to fill out the rest of the timetable. I came to Dillion with this a couple days ago, with the premise of us doing a show by ourselves without the SOS, and really the basic reason was just because, of course, the reason behind SOS was because, again, we had epic conversation whenever we would stop recording any of our big chats. So I figured, why don't we just do a show that's just like that with random conversation, and then when Andreas came in, it was like, now we have a regular segment. So that kind of got defeated, but still, the random epic conversations are the forefront. But even when the whole SOS group isn't present, you and I have really amazing conversations, because the thing that that kind of planted the seed for us to actually sit down and do SOS was this one conversation we had during the summer where we first came up with the demons from outer space, or we found out about the demons from outer space, rather. We discovered their secret.
Yes, we finally got off our lazy asses and plugged it into Google Translate.
Right. Now, for those of you who don't know what the demons from outer space is, who don't listen to SOS, you'll have to listen to SOS to find out. Actually, I don't even think we actually explained it in SOS.
No, I don't know if we explained it explicitly or not.
Yeah, well, essentially what the Demons from Outer Space refers to is the title of we definitely have explained this before, the infamous German version, the German language version of Godzilla vs. Megalon from 1973.
Because the Germans have interesting choices when it comes to titling things.
Oh, you wouldn't even know it, dear viewer. Dylan, what is the German title for Godzilla vs. Megalon?
The German title for Godzilla vs. Megalon is King Kong, because Jaguar, dear viewer, is King Kong in a robot suit.
Of course. I can't believe you never thought of that, dear viewer. What the fuck's wrong with you?
King Kong and the Demons from Outer Space.
Now, before you jump into Google to make sure this is correct, let me just say, the Google results that are going to pop up if you type that title in are going to frighten you. But the only way we found this out was by plugging it into Google Translator, because it doesn't have a Wikipedia page. I've never seen any references to that being the title anywhere else on the web. It's always been King Kong and then the German words, or it's been German language version of Godzilla vs. Megalon. And the only way we found this out was we were like, what the fuck is the subtitle? Because for years, I always thought it was just King Kong versus Megalon, but it turns out I was dearly mistaken. It is King Kong and the Demons from Outer Space.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the poster so that I can read the actual German words.
Yeah, I don't remember them. But that's where the name of the show comes from, because that's where... it's from conversations like that I thought it would be cool if Dylan and I did our own podcast. So that's where the show's title came from. But again, I wasn't really keen on putting the word podcast after the Demons from Outer Space, because we do that with everything. So this will stand out amongst the crowd of other Zazubaar Film Production podcasts, or rather Zazubaar Audio Productions, as I said in the opening titles of Zcast, which is not an official company, but I'll make it that one day. Don't worry.
One of these days he will copyright it.
Right, indeed. Just like we're working on with Musla.
Yes, people who don't know that, Musla is copyright pending, so don't fucking use them.
Indeed, pointing the gun at the fucking computer. Also, copyright pending on King Kong and the Demons from Outer Space, which will not go through, but we will try our best anyway.
Really?
No.
You should, because, that's the actual...
Oh, we would get away with. The Demons from Outer Space, I would totally copyright that. But King Kong and the Demons from Outer Space probably couldn't get away with that.
No, not without spending insane amounts of money to pay off.
But wait a minute.
What is it, RKO?
No, they don't own the rights, because that company doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It would be, what would it be? It'd be Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers.
Well, no, because the rights to the original film goes to Warner Brothers right now, but the rights to the character go to Universal right now.
I thought they just like loaned him out to people, or is that just the way it was at the time?
Um, I'm not sure how Kong's copyright works because, I know that Turner Classic Films owned the character for years, up until the 90s, I believe. But my thing is, King Kong was a ride at Universal Studios.
Hmm.
And that was a ride that originated in the late 80s, maybe? Maybe even the 90s. But we know Kong got sold to Universal in the 90s because you had the failed 96 Jackson remake that Adam talked about on ZGC last year. References. Wink!
Yeah. Okay, the actual German words are King Kong, Dämonen aus dem Weltall. Weltall. I cannot speak German.
The craziest Southern German this side of the Mason-Dixon. It's Dylan McCandless.
Yeehaw.
Hi.
I,
Wait, that was Japanese. Heil. Heil is German.
I have some German in me. More Irish, but I have some German.
What are you more predominantly, Irish or German?
Definitely Irish. There's.
I'm more predominantly German. But I have Irish in me as well. We're two of the whitest white guys this side of the States.
Yes. Potatoes with every meal.
That's actually not far off. I eat a lot of French fries. I do. And also a lot of baked potatoes.
The only kind of potato I do not eat, and this is strange for a Southerner, but, is mashed potatoes, of all things.
Do you eat sweet potatoes?
Well, see, a sweet potato isn't technically a potato. That's a different plant.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wait, what's a sweet potato?
It's a different plant. They just call it a sweet potato.
So what's the actual plant? Or you don't know?
I don't know. I don't know my...
I thought you were my culinary expert, Dylan.
I'm not a culinary expert.
Damn it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot. The other little known fact about Godzilla versus Megalon, other than that Jaguar is King Kong in a robot suit, and Gigan is a demon from outer space, is that Godzilla and Megalon fight atop the World Trade Center.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing from the movie poster from America, which is a weird story because little known fact about Godzilla versus Megalon. Now, never in a million years did you... Because I know Dylan and I kind of have a similar opinion on Godzilla versus Megalon. Dylan is less extreme than I am, but we both are not fans of Godzilla versus Megalon.
No, there is one thing I like about Godzilla versus Megalon.
And it's one of the things that I hate most about it. Dylan, what do you like about Godzilla versus Megalon?
I fucking love Jet Jaguar.
I hate Jet Jaguar.
Wait, there are actually two things I kind of like about Megalon. I do like Jet Jaguar, and Megalon is a neat monster in and of itself.
Oh, yeah, totally. That's totally true.
Beyond that, I mean, Seatopia is a cool idea.
It's a great idea. Well, for me, it's like, oh, finally, we're getting away from the aliens, and then they're like, oh, by the way, Gigan's in this movie. I was like, almost got him. But it's weird because Godzilla vs. Megalon, I never thought we would be in the minority on that movie. Ever. In a million years. Because it turns out there is a large faction of the Godzilla fan community that loves that movie. And I can definitely see the reasons why a lot of them, more often than not, turn out to be Tokusatsu fans. Now, for those of you who don't know what Tokusatsu is, that's stuff like Ultraman, Spectreman, Zone Fighter, all those big giant robot versus giant monster shows. A robot, would it be considered a robot? Is Ultraman considered a robot?
I'm not 100% sure because I'm not as well versed in Ultraman as like David and Andres are. He's an alien, I know that much. I don't know if he's robotic.
Is he?
Yeah, he's an alien.
I've never watched any Ultramans. I have no idea.
He comes from.
I get that.
He comes from. Let me just read this off the.
Planet Krypton.
He comes from. I'm just going to read this off the DVD here. Nebula M713.
Not far off from the Space Hunter M Nebula.
Perhaps not. It's a conspiracy.
It is a conspiracy.
Ultraman was working for Gigan the whole time. You know what the German title for Godzilla versus the Sea Monster is?
Isn't it Frankenstein's Monsters, blah, blah, blah?
Frankenstein, yes. But I just took the poster and did the exact same thing I did for Demons with Outer Space and typed it into Google Translate, and it doesn't translate because I guess the word that's used just doesn't work, but it's "and the enormously from the sea."
What?
Yeah.
What's the word that doesn't translate?
Ungeheuer.
Ungeheuer?
Here, something.
Here.
And apparently on the other end it comes out as enormously. It's like this title was almost normal.
Well, I mean, aside from Frankenstein being in it.
Well, yeah.
But that was the typical thing with the Germans. That's the one thing where King Kong and the Demons from Outer Space deviates, and in the next two Godzilla films also deviate.
Yeah. Is Megalon the point where they stopped using Frankenstein and started using?
Yeah,
Kong?
is this the point in the continuity where Frankenstein gave up?
Maybe, I don't know. I really want to get a hold of all the German versions of these.
Well, you know what I wish was true, but even though it's not, because Andres and I took the time to watch the trailer for the German version of Godzilla vs. Megalon, and they don't even attempt to explain what the fuck's going on with Jet Jaguar. All they say is that he's a robot version of King Kong, and that's it. They don't go into any more than that.
Well, if that's what he is, then he should be Mechanicon.
That's exactly what Andres said. And I was like, the science is sound. But apparently not. So I'm thinking, well, I mean, I can kind of see why if we're going by the kooky logic of the Germans who were retitling these movies. Because, you know, if you're scared enough to not use Godzilla's name, then you're probably not going to use Mechanicon.
Right, yeah.
So you're probably going to go with King Kong because that's the most marketable of all of them. So, I don't know, it's weird. But it's also weird because, so it kind of goes, I kind of consider the latter Godzilla films of the Showa era to be a trilogy. The Godzilla vs. King Kong trilogy, because, Dylan, what are the following two films titled?
Oh, yes, okay. The title of Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. Well, if you're in France, it's simply Godzilla versus Robot.
I love that. In France, they just titled it Godzilla versus Robot. Oh my god, everybody fucking run!
It sounds like something the Russians would call it, doesn't it?
Right?
Godzilla versus Robot.
Versus the Robot.
Okay, but anyway, in Germany, it is called King Kong, Monster from the Deep.
Say it one more time.
King Kong, Monster from the Deep. Now,
so first things first.
Not only is King Kong not in this movie, but he is in fact not a monster from the deep.
Now here's my question. What monster are they saying is Kong?
That is a good question.
Because if it's Godzilla, they're referring to the ocean. If it's Mechagodzilla, they're referring to underground, because in the final scene, Mechagodzilla erupts from the ground.
Perhaps, or they could be referring to
King Caesar, who erupts from a mountain.
Or they could be referring, because Mechagodzilla is built by aliens, they could be referring to space. Deep
from
space.
The deep?
Deep space.
Yeah, but from the deep. The deep is usually either referring to the ocean or underground.
Yeah, in America, but the Germans don't know that.
Or in Korea with fucking Yongari Monster from the Deep.
Yeah.
Which is a movie I haven't seen in years, but I remember hating it.
It's not wonderful.
No. Neither is the remake, as it turns out.
Oh, I would watch the original all day long before I watch the remake again.
I don't know if I would, because the remake has a little bit of nostalgia for me.
Not me.
Which is weird because of how much I dislike it, but I saw it really young, and I just remember the scene that stuck out to me as a kid is the scene where they're driving in the car away from the dig site, and the monster pops up in the middle of the road, coincidentally right in front of the main character's car. And because in this version, Hungary can teleport, because, you know, why not? Anyway, so they get out, and everyone freaks out except for the female character. And she just starts going, "Where is it? I can't see it." I'm like, what do you mean you can't see it? Are you fucking kidding me?
See, I didn't see either version of Hungary Young. I saw them all later on. And so, for me, I just despise the remake altogether, but the original...
Which one did you see first?
I saw them in order. I saw the original first.
Okay, because it's interesting because a lot of these movies a lot of monster movies, I really wish that I could go back and rewatch them in order and
Yeah.
see how big of a giant monster movie fan I would be now.
Yeah,
My biggest,
it's weird
my biggest,
because like most people, I know I saw the Godzilla movies all out of order.
I think everybody did,
And
especially if you're an American fan.
then like I saw Mothra way after I was introduced to the character of Mothra.
I still haven't seen the original Mothra. Is that a problem?
It might be. It's a good movie. Go watch it.
I know, and it's funny. I have access to it. I've just never sat down and watched it. It's something I have to do.
Yeah, didn't I send you a link?
You did.
Go watch the movie.
I keep forgetting. It's not like I don't have and it's not like when you sent it to me I didn't have time. This was like over a year ago now that you sent me this link, and I just haven't gotten to it. It's on my list.
He was all busy and shit, being a high school student.
Yeah, now I'm all busy and shit being a college student, so.
Which is way worse.
Which is, whoa, God. And a film student nonetheless, and now I'm working on 14 different projects at once. Whoa, got major phlegm. Whoa. Hairball. What were we talking about?
Seeing these movies out of order.
I remember. The biggest one for me is the Universal monsters. Because I saw the first Universal monster movie I remember seeing was Revenge of the Creature.
Oh God.
Which is not a great movie.
No.
Loved it as a kid, of course, but not a great movie now. And I saw Revenge of the Creature, and then I remember, because before, that was part of the Universal Monsters Collection VHS line, which is fucking cool as hell. And in front of all those movies, if any of you out there have them, it's they have trailers for all the different releases of all the different movies, and I saw all these movies, and I was like, I have to buy every single one of them. And I didn't get every one of them. Oh, I still have quite a few of them, though. But the one that I got next was the original Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Substantially better movie.
Substantially more entertaining movie. Revenge of the Creature is like this bizarre, like, I don't know what it is. It's weird because it's actually one of the original screenplays for Creature from the Black Lagoon was supposed to end totally ripping off the original King Kong.
Yeah.
With the monster, going to the city, and
so now the way it is it's just broken up into two movies. One movie ripping off the majority of King Kong, and then the other movie ripping off the ending.
Yeah, pretty much. Although there's a lot of 50s cheese in fucking Revenge of the Creature that's not in the original.
I mean, it could have been worse. Your first movie could have been The Creature Walks Among Us.
That could have happened, and I might not be alive today, but the big one, Creature from the Black Lagoon, whatever. I mean, it's a trilogy, but it's not universally, get it? It's not universally important to the mainstays of the classic monster line. The Gill-Man kind of gets put in there after the fact, and that's mainly because he was created a decade later. But you look at the classic Universal monsters, the old world European monsters. Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, the Mummy, what was it? Invisible Man. You look at those, and the first one I saw of those was Frankenstein meets the Wolfman.
Same here.
Really? So David as well. That's fucking weird. Now, how did you see it? Was it on TV or on VHS?
No, we had a VHS of it.
As did I. Which is what year? What year are we talking?
What year?
Yeah. Do you remember the year?
Oh man, I was a tot.
Oh, were you, okay. I was a little older. I was about either 8 or 9 when I first saw the movie.
Yeah, the thing about Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, I have the same thing with that as I do with Godzilla. I don't remember the year. I don't remember which one was my first. You
don't remember any of this stuff, dude.
It's like
never.
Dylan,
what was your first Dragon Ball Z thing? I don't remember.
It all happened when I was just a mere pipsqueak.
Oh my God.
When I was a wee lad.
When I was a lad back in Ireland.
Exactly, because I swam over.
Like fucking Gyra and shit, or fucking King Kong in King Kong Escapes, where he's like, he swims from Mondo Island all the way to Japan. The science is sound.
I had to come to America because Ireland ran out of that red juice.
Right?
No, but yeah, I mean, this all happened when I was a young warthog, so I have no idea.
Warthog.
But
Now, we talking like Pumbaa or like the Halo vehicle?
I think the Pumbaa one would be closer, Bill.
So you're either a transformer or you're an animal. Which would you prefer?
It's not a matter of preferences; it's a matter of which one is slightly more accurate.
Well, all right, fair enough.
But yeah. So it's like, but I do know that was the first. That's the first one that I have memories of watching because we had it on VHS, and then the rest of them I would just catch, on TV every so often.
Yeah, likewise. But it's weird because it would almost make more sense to me if this was on TV.
And eventually I got the the DVDs or whatever, but
yeah,
now I have
collection.
Now I have Netflix, so who pulls out the discs anymore?
Right? Well, I actually did today because that's the one I rewatched today, and that's a fun fucking movie. A lot of people shit on a lot of people shit on the classic Universal monsters, saying, "Oh, the movies don't hold up." If you have some perspective, they're very fun movies. They're not. I don't think they hold up as horror films, but as just straight up monster movies, they hold up real well. They're fun, especially Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. There's not a moment in that movie where I'm bored. It's such an entertaining film. But
actually, if I might go off on a slight thing about Netflix,
sure.
Why is it that I can watch The Bride of Frankenstein on Netflix any time of day or night that I want?
I know where you're going with this.
But the original Frankenstein is not on Netflix.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Another example. I can watch RoboCop. I can watch RoboCop 3.
Yep. I was about to say this one.
There is no RoboCop 2. I can watch the TV miniseries. But there is no RoboCop 2.
Right?
I'm surprised they don't have the animated series, but there's no RoboCop 2.
The fucking Canadian TV movies, the Prime Directive series.
Yes. But there's
those are terrible.
But there's
Robo-Cable.
There's no RoboCop
2. Yep.
Why?
I can watch the trailer for the remake.
But I could not watch RoboCop 2.
Right? Yeah, I agree. I had another example of that recently. What was it?
It's like...
Oh, I hate it when they don't put full seasons on Netflix.
Yeah.
Two cases. One, Transformers, the original show. Chunks of season 4 are missing.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Bigger problem. Torchwood. Isn't the Children of Earth series not complete on Netflix?
No, they have all 5 days on there.
Do they?
Yeah.
I could have sworn that Ian had told me that a couple of them were missing.
No, because Children of Earth, was a week-long thing, so it was only 5 episodes. Because I remember when it first aired, I watched it. It was an episode on Monday, an episode on Tuesday, et cetera, et cetera. And it was all there, if I remember correctly. The new thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. What is it called again? Miracle Day?
Miracle Day, which luckily I watched on HBO. Or was it HBO? Or it was Stars. I watched that on Stars when it aired. And
that's fucked up, isn't it?
It's not on Netflix yet.
Well, I mean, the reason why is because the BBC doesn't own it.
No, but they aired it on the BBC recently.
Yeah, but they didn't create it, and it uses... Well, wasn't the big thing with that was that they couldn't make references to previous Doctor Who characters? Because they didn't own the rights to Doctor Who?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they can't, no. Miracle Day, obviously, it has some nods to the continuity of the first 3 seasons.
Right, but it's all very vague.
Of the first 2 seasons and of Children of Earth, just because it has to.
Right, well, where it opens, yeah.
And it had Bill Pullman in it, and that was nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. Fucking Lone Star fighting Captain Jack.
As a child-killing serial killer, yeah.
Mm-hmm. In a world where Captain Jack is a main character, that premise is so genius where no one can die.
Yeah.
Such a genius idea.
Although I think in that little span of time, he actually was able to die. So, the tables were turned. If I remember correctly.
Oh, okay.
I haven't watched it since it aired the first time.
Okay. I gotcha.
And there's this really convoluted explanation for how the whole thing was caused by a sample of his blood, and it's...
Oh wow. Did they talk about why he's not able to die in that?
I think they make very, very, very vague references.
Yeah, somebody had powers, and they used said powers to make me immortal.
You see, I went to a place and things happened.
There was a guy in a leather jacket and his sexy assistant, and she fucked shit up.
And a big blue box.
No, that'd be getting too close. You can't even talk about the TARDIS even vaguely. You have to dance around it and shit.
And everyone was getting murdered by trash cans.
Nope, too close. Too close.
With plungers.
You can't even like visually describe what everything looks like. You have to be so vague that it could take place in the middle of a desert.
Can you at least give us like a basic geographic idea of where this was happening? Space!
Nope, too close. Woo! Sued. Torchwood Miracle Day. Cancelled.
Like BBC just gives them the rights to see how they can fuck it up, and then the first time they fuck it up, they're like, "Up, sued."
We just talked about garbage cans. Too close.
Garbage cans in space. How much does that give away?
Lots. That was the flush. They flushed the script down the toilet.
Yes.
But back to Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. I just find it so bizarre that that's the one everyone started with, because if you watch it in context of the series, it really fits into the continuity very specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
and as a kid, as a kid, I didn't care. As a kid, it was
No, well, here's the thing. If you watch it without that previous knowledge, it works totally fine. But if you watch it with that previous knowledge, it works fine, but in a whole new, more convoluted way. Now, here's what I'm talking about. Obviously, in the original Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, the monster... I had always been alluded, or not alluded, what's the word? Confused, as to Henry Frankenstein dying in Bride of Frankenstein, which is not true. Henry Frankenstein lives through both movies.
No, he gets away in that one, and it actually makes pretty good sense. The one that
it's a great ending. The one that doesn't make sense is the first movie.
Yeah, him surviving the first movie doesn't make any sense at all. Which
Right.
I mean, it's just like one little line at the beginning of Bride where Mary Shelley just basically says, "Nope, he's alive."
Yep. Mm-hmm. Which James Whale was pissed about. He thought that ruined the ending of the first movie.
It does.
It does, because the whole meaning of Frankenstein is he goes down with his creation.
They should have just had that other guy, Dr. Pretorius, trying to replicate his experiments and just not even bring Henry into it.
Now, I mean, that being said, Colin Clive is really good in Bride of Frankenstein.
Well, yeah, but still.
But no, I agree with you. It still doesn't make any sense.
It's a simple fact of he shouldn't be there.
Right, exactly.
The other weird thing about seeing Frankenstein meets the Wolfman before you see either Frankenstein or the Wolfman is you're not really getting the classic Universal Frankenstein, because it's not. It's.
Oh, we'll get into that in a minute.
It's not Boris Karloff.
No, not only is it not Boris Karloff, it's not technically the Frankenstein monster.
No, it's not.
So here's what we're referring to. This is why the movie almost works better if you don't know the original series.
Yeah, it worked better for me before I knew the continuity.
Yep. All right. So here's what happens. Especially if you don't know the first movie, if you only know the basics of Frankenstein's legend, it works really well. However, when you watch it as a kid, when they're talking about Dr. Frankenstein very vaguely, and they show the castle that got burned down, you think they're talking about the original Frankenstein, about Victor, or who should be Victor, or Henry in the original case. Henry, Victor, the original Dr. Frankenstein, and the original monster. They are not. What the hell was that?
I have no idea.
That was a weird noise. Anyway, we're recording this on Halloween night, so who knows what that could have been. It could have been witches. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm sure it was witches, right?
See what we do with our Halloween people.
Yeah, right.
All for you.
Indeed. Anyway, so what happens is a little movie comes along 4 years after the series had ended with Bride of Frankenstein, and they come back with The Son of Frankenstein, which is a really, really good monster movie. With the incredible performance of Bela Lugosi as Igor, the first appearance of Igor, and Basil Rathbone as Wolf Frankenstein, who is the son of Henry Frankenstein.
That's another problem that people who haven't actually watched the movies and are only going on pop culture references. Everybody always thinks Igor was there from the beginning.
Right, yeah. The original assistant was a guy named Fritz, and then who was played by Dwight Frye, who was Renfield in Dracula, and he's basically in every single famous Universal movie. He's in Dracula, he's in Frankenstein, he's in The Invisible Man, he's in The Wolfman, he's in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, he's in everything. He's in Bride of Frankenstein. And in Bride of Frankenstein, he plays a guy whose name is something. I don't remember his name in Bride of Frankenstein, but he plays basically the same character, even though the character is dead. We're not sure who the fuck Igor is supposed to be.
No.
Because
he just shows up.
He just shows up, but he claims to be the original. Now, Son of Frankenstein clearly retcons large portions of the original two films. Now, here's something I want to bring up about the Universal movies, because I watched Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman today, and this is something that was on my mind. The one thing, looking back on them, that kind of makes them fall apart for people who nitpick them, and why I think you need to have a lot of perspective in order to fully enjoy them, is that these movies came out in the 30s and 40s. These people were seeing these movies only in their original theatrical runs. So imagine watching the Iron Man films and only being able to see them the times you see them in theaters.
Yeah, see, that's the other thing. Your impressions are always better the first time you see it, unless it's just a bad movie. Impressions are usually greater the first time you see it, in a theater, or even if it's just on VHS. If it's your first time experiencing something and it's new, but then when you go back and you rewatch it and you start picking out the little inconsistencies, that's where things that's where things sort of degrade over time.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing about those movies that kind of causes the continuity problems, is that these people weren't able to see these movies over and over again, so keeping the continuity straight is really difficult. So when you go from Dracula to Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, you don't know what the fuck happened in the original Dracula. That movie came out almost 20 years ago. So
you've heard people talk about it, and
right,
that's about
exactly.
it.
Well, exactly, because they didn't have access to home video or anything, and the only way you could see them again is if these movies were re-released theatrically, which happened frequently. Usually back in those days, once a theater house had a print of the film, they would rerun it rather regularly. I know that's how a lot of people would rewatch old Godzilla movies back in like the early 80s. But what? Oh, okay. I know where I was going. Wow. I'm going off on a rant. Anyway, so, that's why these continuity things don't make sense. So, in Son of Frankenstein, when the laboratory of Dr. Frankenstein looks completely different, and Igor is brought in, your audience probably doesn't remember the first two films all that well because they came out 8 years and 4 years ago, respectively. So, it doesn't matter if we retcon it, because they're not going to remember. So because of that, inability to see the films over and over again and remember things more clearly, they don't mind changing some things. So in Son of Frankenstein, you have Igor, the lab looks different, the actual events are different, because Frankenstein's monster is alive and everything. And once again, you go through the story, Frankenstein... Does Wolf Frankenstein die in that movie?
I do not recall.
I don't think he does, but whatever. But apparently he has a brother named Ludwig Frankenstein, which is picked up on in the Ghost of Frankenstein. Now, the interesting thing is that like the Frankenstein movies kind of work in twos, where you have Frankenstein and Bride, and then you have Son and Ghost, because Ghost of Frankenstein picks up directly where the first film left off. except Igor's alive somehow. Apparently, this guy is Michael Myers and can just get shot over and over again and not die.
Well, I mean, he's Bela Lugosi, so
fair enough.
There's that whole vampire thing going on.
Fair enough.
He's like the classic horror Chuck Norris.
Right. Underneath that beard is another fist.
Indeed.
Or no, in Bela Lugosi's case, it's another pair of eyes.
Yes.
That's how Bela Lugosi kicks your ass.
Shadowy eyes.
Right?
That they tried to replicate in The Mummy.
Yeah, and failed. I don't like the Boris Karloff version of The Mummy. I'm sorry.
When Bela Lugosi gives you that stare in the original movie, again, to go off on another little side note, when Bela Lugosi gives you that stare in the original movie, it works. It's very I don't know how to describe it, but it works.
It's hypnotic.
Yeah, hypnotic's the right word. When Boris Karloff gives you that look in The Mummy, you can't help but just look at how old he looks. Like,
right, which is a testament to Jack Pierce's makeup, but
at the same time, it's just like it doesn't have that hypnotic effect, so you're just like picking out how bad the image is. It's like, oh, look at those wrinkles. I'm so glad I'm not watching it in HD.
Oh, well, that's another thing where the Universal movies start to kind of show their age is when you watch them in HD. You're like, why is there a piece of tape on the Wolfman's head? And you're like, oh, because that's holding the thing together.
Yeah, don't watch these movies in HD.
No, it's not really a good idea.
HD is not always better, people.
No, not always. Not always.
But I mean, as much crap as I'm giving the continuity in the Universal Frankenstein movies, at least they didn't make Frankenstein meets the Space Monster.
Oh, God, do you remember that?
I remember Frankenstein.
It has nothing to do with Frankenstein. It's about, now for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, there's this, what was it, the 60s? I'm going to say 60s.
1965?
You're probably right. It's the mid to late 60s. This little movie comes out, a drive-in flick, the definition of a drive-in flick. You would see this in a double feature with like War of the Gargantuas or Rodan or something.
Them.
Would be this movie called Frankenstein versus the Space Monster, in which a astronaut gets horrible burns, half of his face goes green, and his name is Frank. So what do they decide to start calling him?
Get it?
Get it, kids? Get it?
Get it?
So they start calling him Frankenstein, and thus Frankenstein meets a space monster. And these aliens come down, and if I remember the movie correctly, they start like fucking women and stuff, and then they obviously don't show this, but like it's implied sex, and
thus everybody paid that money for a monster that's not even in the movie.
Right, and then I guess, as far as I remember, the Frankenstein character fights the space monster in the end. I don't even remember. Didn't the space monster kind of look like it had like one eye and it had like those it kind of looked like the green slime?
No, it has two eyes. It's got this really weird. I'm looking at it right now. It's.
I'm gonna look it up quick.
It's got this weird, like almost bat-like quality.
Really?
Yeah, it's like Nosferatu crossed with Skeletor crossed with I don't know what. But then its body is like this weird furry looking. I don't know. It's a strange monster.
Oh, I'm looking at it now. Yeah, this movie has nothing to do with fucking Frankenstein. Oh yeah, there it is. And it's weird because they actually rip off the original poster for Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman because it uses the same logo as Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, just without the Wolfman.
And without Frankenstein, but they don't know that.
Yeah, but they don't care about that. Hell, they probably would have called the space monster the Wolfman.
And then you have a movie that has absolutely nothing it advertises.
Right? Exactly.
Kind of like King Kong, Monster from the Deep.
Well, I suppose an argument can be made that the character of Frankenstein is at least called Frankenstein.
Yeah, but he's not Frankenstein.
No, but at least he's named that.
I guess.
Now, what would not work is if you had a movie called, I don't know, maybe King Kong and the Demons from Outer Space.
That would be a problem, yes.
For nothing the movie says, except for one like vague aspect, is in it. So King Kong's not in it.
We're having a podcast called Demons from Outer Space. Why would you do that?
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, just to let you guys know, neither Dylan nor I are demons from outer space.
No.
Dun dun dun!
Well, as far as they know, I could have been, Bill. Damn it.
Damn, I'm sorry. I fucked up. Oh, yep, I fucked up. Anyway.
Needless to say, there's a reason I didn't bring Frankenstein Meets the Space Monster up on Kaiju Spotlight, because you just get into some hairy territory.
Right.
Which I was getting into enough of as it was. So.
Yeah, right. I thought you did okay there. You mainly focused on the kaiju.
Yeah, I had to give a brief overall history of.
Right. I mean, you got to explain who the character is.
I mean, technically, if you go by the strict Japanese definition of the word, he was always a kaiju in their eyes, and only turning gigantic only turned him into a dai kaiju.
Dai kaiju. But by, monster movie fan standards, the kaiju is the one from Frankenstein Conquers the World, and his spawn, Sandra and Gyra.
Given that I am a American.
Right, indeed.
You have monsters and you have kaiju.
Right, exactly. The bastardization of a Japanese word. Well, because that's something that I never really differentiated back when I was a kid. I didn't know the word kaiju as a kid.
No, that wasn't until later for me either.
Yeah, I mean,
Godzilla was a giant monster.
Well, yeah, exactly, but here's the thing. What did you call stuff in the class of Frankenstein and the Wolfman?
Just monsters.
You see, I would too, but if you're talking about monsters, and to someone like me who was obsessed with monsters, I would be like, what kind of monster? So, are we talking Frankenstein kind of monster or Godzilla kind of monster? And there's a scene...
I would always differentiate that anyway. I would never call Godzilla just a monster. I would always call him a giant monster.
Right,
I was happy when I found the word kaiju because it's so much shorter.
Well, exactly, but here's what I would call Frankenstein-class monsters. I would call them little monsters. Which is really not true, because Frankenstein's supposed to be like 8.5 feet tall.
No, see, Little Monsters is a terrible movie.
Oh, God. No, the movie that sparked that idea for me was a movie that, God, it was such a reflective movie for my youth. A little movie called The Monster Squad. I fucking love The Monster Squad because it takes me back to an era where I would sit in my room and just talk about monsters with my friends. And the scene in that movie for me that really kind of defined the kind of conversations I would have with my mother is the scene where the mother brings in this diary who was supposedly by Dr. Abraham Van Helsing. She brings in this diary to her son, who roughly my age when I saw the film, and goes, "This is the guy who fought Dracula." Right? He's like, "Yeah," and she's like, "That's the really tall one, right?" And then the kid goes, "No, that's Godzilla." And I always thought that was funny, and I was like, "That's a conversation I would have with my mother."
Right. He wasn't the really tall one. He was the slightly taller one.
Right. Well, I mean, again, that's the thing. It's like, what do you call Dracula-class monsters? I mean, I would call them little monsters as a kid.
Right.
But when I would say that, people would be like, "Are you talking about like fucking, like the Ghoul School from Scooby-Doo?"
Yeah.
Which apparently people knew. Which is like, I thought I was the only person who knew that. Ironically enough, Godzilla is in that movie, so...
Yeah, I remember the Ghoul School. I remember Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf.
Oh, God, you remember that? What a weird title.
Where they had the wacky racers race at the end of the monsters. Well,
here's the thing. Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf. What the fuck does that title mean?
Because Shaggy is a werewolf in that movie, and he is a reluctant werewolf. He doesn't want to be a werewolf. He wants to be a human again.
But thus, by the same token, can we call the movie we've been talking about Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, Frankenstein Meets the Reluctant Wolfman?
I guess you could.
Or Frankenstein Meets the Suicidal Wolfman.
I guess you could. I mean, you wouldn't be able to market it to kids with that title, but... All
right, fine. Frankenstein Meets the Reluctant Werewolf. Would that be a descriptive enough title?
That would work, yes.
But
I don't think you need that at that point because the Wolfman is...
Well, I agree with you. What is the
Wolfman
adjective
is the original reluctant werewolf.
But wait. Scooby-Doo and his friendly werewolf. Doesn't that make more sense? Like, the reluctant werewolf sounds such like an awkward title to me. Not like awkward sounding, it does kind of roll off the tongue.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of, like, it's such a bizarre word to pick and put in front of the word werewolf.
Right. Well, it never bothered me that much because there was a story called The Reluctant Dragon or something that I remember hearing as a kid, and so I don't know.
Yeah.
So I was aware of that, and so Reluctant Werewolf didn't come off that strange to me.
No, it literally didn't come off as strange to me until you just said it. Because I always saw that as a kid, but I don't know. It just came off as strange to me when you said it just now, which is weird. But yeah.
Frankenstein meets the Reluctant Kaiju.
Yeah, it's called Frankenstein Conquers the World. Or War of the Gargantuas, if you're counting that.
Frankenstein inadvertently gives birth to one reluctant kaiju and one kaiju that just wants to eat people.
Yeah, that's a movie that could be made into one hell of a remake. I think that could be.
I have always said that. In fact, I wrote a basic outline for one that I sent to Gorazard.
Would you mind spoiling it here?
Not in great detail.
That's fine.
But I will say that obviously, the Frankenstein origin would not work for a modern audience.
No, not at all.
So I just went with genetic engineering.
Yeah, that's what
because
I would say too.
I feel like with that, it's not the exact Frankenstein origin, obviously, but you get to play around with the same themes as Frankenstein, and thus you connect it to Frankenstein thematically, even though the movie does not involve a giant Frankenstein.
Right, well, that's what I always said about War of the Gargantua was the American version. I personally think, and a lot of people don't agree with me on this, I think the American version works better than the Japanese version. Because I think the Japanese version makes less sense. Because it's like, alright, we've got these two giant hairy monsters called whatever they call them in the Japanese version. Well, you have Santa and Gyro, but I don't know what they call them generically.
Yeah, if the cells of Frankenstein's heart in the original movie regenerated into a Frankenstein monster instead of regenerating into whoever he got the heart from, like it should have, logically, then shouldn't the two gargantuas look the same? Shouldn't they also be giant Frankensteins as opposed to being something else?
Well, I don't think they would look the same. I just don't think they would look like how they turned out.
Yeah, I mean,
well, because the explanation for why,
where did the Sasquatch DNA come from?
Well, here's the thing.
Because I missed the part of that movie where Frankenstein got bit by a werewolf. I never saw that.
And that was a deleted scene.
Oh, okay. Must have happened right. Must have happened right after he fought the octopus.
He just had one hell of a time at the end of that movie. He fought an octopus and then he got bitten by a werewolf.
That's the other thing that I will spoil for the script treatment that I wrote for a War of the Gargantuas remake is that by doing genetic engineering, it gave me a plausible excuse to have the giant octopus in there.
How does that give you a plausible excuse for the giant octopus to be in there?
Because the giant octopus is just another one of the genetic engineering experiments of the people that wind up making the gargantuas.
So it's like fucking Bride of the Monster. You just got it in a pond outside.
It's like they're working on like splicing, and so in one of their experiments they managed to get an octopus the size of a whale. Because I didn't want to have like an octopus the size of the one in the original movie, because at the point in my remake, okay, now I'm getting into more spoiler territory than I wanted to get into, but whatever. At the point in the outline where Santa fights it, he is not yet the gigantic creature that he is at the end. He's more of like, I would say like King Kong sized. Like I put an intermediate in there.
Oh, okay, all right. But I don't want you to spoil any more than that if you don't want to. I don't know. I basically had the same thought about it as you did, is do genetic engineering. But I always like the idea that the way it makes sense with Gyra is that, and again, this is why I think the American version makes more sense, is if their cells are so fucking volatile where they regenerate so easily, then it makes sense to me that if Sanda's got, knocked off and fell into the ocean and then fed on protein and stuff there, that it would become its own different being because it grew up in a different environment. Just that's just the way evolution and adaptation works. But the thing is with Sanda is like, I don't know, it makes less sense to me that they come from Frankenstein's monsters, because I don't know. It just makes less sense to me.
Mm.
Um.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's much better just leaving their origin a bit more ambiguous than that.
or not ambiguous, just disconnected from another character.
Mm.
Though you could, I mean, if you really wanted to do the Frankenstein thing, you could do it because the character is public domain. But I just think the character works better on his own.
Yeah, the other thing is, I do not think that will play with a modern audience. Like the people who like Frankenstein Conquers the World are kaiju fans anyway. They're used to older movies, and so weird stuff like this does not faze you. If you like 50s B movies in any capacity, then you are aware of then you possess the ability to put suspension of disbelief to its highest extent.
Right, exactly. Kaiju fans are like the kings of suspension of disbelief.
And the rest of the modern American audience seems to have no suspension of disbelief, and it just gets on my nerves so bad. But
yeah, that's true. But I think you could pull it off in a modern context. You would just have to write it in properly. Now, I think the problem would be that it would be such a big deal, but ultimately so unimportant to the plot that it would kind of be pointless anyway.
Yeah.
But I think the way you do it is you just open it in the same way that Frankenstein Conquers the World opens, except you just do the gargantuas instead of the monster in the first movie, who is also called Sanda.
Yeah.
I believe. In the Japanese version. I know in the American version they just call him Frankenstein.
I don't know. I thought they called him Frankenstein in the Japanese version.
Did they? Well, I remember seeing stuff like in Wikipedia stuff where he's called Sanda, but that's probably wrong. Because it's fucking Wikipedia.
I don't remember exactly, but I thought they called him Frankenstein.
They probably did. I'm just not remembering.
That was the whole point of doing it, is that for some reason they really liked the idea of a giant Frankenstein.
I know. Well, I mean, it's a cool idea if you do it right, and I don't think Frankenstein Conquers the World did it right. So, I think it could work.
Obviously, the way to do it is for him to get his size powers from Apache Chief.
Right. Right? Frankenstein, la. Or Jet Jaguar.
Oh yeah, he should get it from Jet Jaguar
He just programs it into himself.
Yeah, because
I love that explanation.
It's great.
Oh my god.
He programmed himself to do it.
Really? You didn't install that? You installed that in your robot, but you didn't install, inability to get mind controlled?
Here's the problem. Programming yourself to do something is a software issue. The ability to change size, I'm pretty sure, would be a hardware issue.
Well, alright, programming. Programming would be like Jet Jaguar programs himself to be able to kill a person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He runs electricity through his body to destroy his prime directives.
Right, exactly. You can't reprogram yourself to change your physical form.
No.
That's just not possible.
Especially if you're a robot.
Especially if you're a robot.
Theoretically, that could maybe be done with biological things, just because then you're talking about DNA. But if you're a robot...
Right, well, that's the whole thing, is like, well, a person couldn't do it either without some kind of external force. But if you're a robot, how the fuck does that work?
It doesn't.
I don't know. If he can reprogram himself to grow large, why can't he reprogram himself and have a giant gun?
Maybe Megalon was all the dream of the little boy in the booty shorts. Because as bad as Godzilla's revenge is, Minya getting the ability to change size isn't a problem because it's a dream, so anything can happen.
It's a problem. It doesn't matter in the end.
It's a plausible problem.
Yeah, indeed. At least it makes sense in the whole movie.
Because
I can't believe I just said something in Godzilla's revenge makes sense.
No, it makes sense, Bill, because he has to grow to gigantic proportions because Godzilla says he should fight his own battles.
Right, of course. Because Godzilla is such a wonderful father.
I love the line, and I'm gonna use this when if I ever do Gapper on Kaiju Spotlight. If you listen to the commentary on the Toho Masterworks release of Godzilla's Revenge, the guy who does that commentary, whose name I can never remember, says that Gabara is a monster that looks like a cross between a cat and a frog and sounds like a car that won't start.
Is it David Callett?
No, it's not. Is it David Callett? No, I don't think it's David Callett. You know what? I'm just gonna.
Does he talk like this?
I'm going to pull out the DVD and just look, because now it's going to get on my nerves.
Mm. Yeah, Dillion has this thing where if he doesn't remember something, he goes on like this mission to try and find out what it is. This happened with the last episode of the SOS podcast, where he couldn't remember the name the mummy took as a pseudonym when he returned from the dead.
Oh, that.
Which turned out...
And I didn't remember it until I was watching the episode. And when I heard myself say, what was his name? All of a sudden I just, like, yelled at myself in my head. I was like, you idiot, it's Artis Bay.
Yeah. When you said that, I was like, yep, that's it. I knew it was Bay. I just didn't remember the first name.
I kept thinking of some other name, but then that was from a different movie. And I was like, no, that's not it. Okay, yep. This is some guy that, this is the only commentary of his I've ever seen, I believe. His name is Richard Pusateri.
He's got an interesting name.
See, most of the Toho Masterworks DVDs commentaries are done by what's his name, Ed
Gojaszewski and Steve Rifle.
Yeah, those guys.
Yeah, they did they did it for the original Gojira. They did it for Raids Again. No, they didn't do it for Raids Again.
No, Raids Again was... Again, gonna check. They did Mothra versus Godzilla.
Yeah, and then of course, David Callett did Ghidorah. David Callett is like the coolest Godzilla fan on the planet. I love David Callett.
Okay, I guess Ed just wasn't in this one, because on the audio commentary for Raids Again, it just says, audio commentary with Steve Rifle and friends. The super friends.
Steve Rifle and his amazing friends.
Yes. That would be an amazing animated series. I'm pretty sure we would be the only ones to watch it. Okay, and see, Astro Monster...
Inexplicably, he has spider powers.
Astro Monster is some guy named Stuart Galbraith IV.
Yep, that one I listened to. It's really boring, except for this part where he talks about... There's this like extended part where he talks about Nick Adams, and that's really interesting, but the rest of it's really boring.
Yeah, he's not very entertaining. The ones with Ed and Steve I like, and then, of course, David Callett is always amazing.
David Callett is like a work of art.
And the one on Godzilla's Revenge is quite good as well, just because the guy doesn't take it very seriously. I mean, how could you? But he doesn't try and pass that movie off as more than it is. He's fully aware of how silly it is. And
does he talk about how bad it is?
Oh yeah, he revels in it.
That's great.
You can tell he enjoys that movie in the same way that I enjoy Batman and Robin.
Oh, good.
Or Godzilla versus Hedorah.
Oh God, yeah, yeah, and of course they also did Destroy All Monsters when they released it via Tokyo Shock.
Yeah, they also did. That was Ed and Steve as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My biggest problem with the Gojaszewski and Steve Rifle commentaries is I don't like the fact that they insert interviews into them.
Hmm.
When you do a commentary, I think that it should just be you and the commentator.
Well, I've seen that a lot with older films. I
don't know. It bothers me. It kind of takes me out of the commentary.
I think it was the commentary for Creature from the Black Lagoon I also saw that in, where the guy that was doing it inserted like interviews and stuff. It happens a lot with older films.
Which one? The one that was the one by Tom Weaver?
Because the people that do those commentaries are film historians as opposed to people that actually worked on the film, so...
Right, but... I don't remember that being done for Creature from the Black Lagoon, because that one, I think, is just straight. The one that did have interviews, and it suffered greatly for it, was the Bride of Frankenstein one. That commentary was awful.
You have reached the end of the first episode of The Demons from Outer Space. Apologies for the awkward stop, but as I warned you at the beginning, Dylan's internet connection crapped out and the call just dropped, so there is really no ending to this podcast. So I apologize, but next week we will definitely have a better ending. And we'll come up with some kind of way of signing off, like on the Sons of Serizawa, where I go, "The science is sound." I'll come up with something. There's nothing in this episode, so sorry. We'll come up with something in later episodes. But anyway, thank you very much for listening to the first episode of The Demons from Outer Space. I am Zazubaar, and I gotta fucking come up with a way to close the podcast.